This is the Voice of Golf Show with Peter Kessler.
Welcome to this very special episode of the Voice of Golf Show. I'm Blaine Stenson, and with me, as always, is my co-host, my dear friend, and my mentor, Peter Kessler. And before we get started, my friend, I am going to steal a quote from you, partner. And that was a quote that you used on the most recent Golf Talk Live that we put up on our YouTube channel at Voice of Golf. So please remember to like and subscribe to that. And you said that spring doesn't actually start on March 20th. For us golfers, it starts this week, which is one of the best weeks in all of sports, and that is Masters Week. So happy Masters Week, everybody. Peter, thank you as always for joining me. And I would like to start by asking you what it was like for you going to Augusta for the first time. And you also had the unique experience of playing Augusta, so maybe you could also touch on how that opportunity came about.
Oh, I'd be delighted to tell you that. And the thing about the beginning of spring is, it's funny, my oldest friend's birthday is March 20th. And so frequently that's the beginning of spring. And he just turned 81, and the next day shot 73. So hope springs eternal. It's the beginning of all things. And this is the beginning of a roots take hold. It's the beginning of having months to work on whatever your craft or sport is. So yeah, it's the most special of times, and because the Masters is played on the same golf course every year, we know it as well as we know wherever it is we play at home. So the familiarity again of the spring and everything in bloom. So yeah, it signifies the beginning of spring, and it signifies hope. And there's plenty of people this week who are going to have lots of it. My first visit to Augusta National was in 1995. The Golf Channel had started in January of 1995, and Arnold Palmer, the chairman, was my host on the very first show that we did called Golf Talk Live, of which I was the host. And that kicked it off at 8 p.m. on January 17th. So by the time we got to June, by the time we got to March, Arnold and I were getting to be pretty good friends. And he said, I want you to come to Augusta with me and Winnie in my plane. And he said, and you and Winnie can watch me play. And she said, do we have to? And so, what better way to go to Augusta National than with Arnold and Winnie? And now Arnold would be have just getting ready to turn 65, born in 1929, so he was 65. So in 1995, there was nobody there. There was nobody there relative to what the situation is today. And because the course is built on a mountain that literally is a 45-degree job, the first hole goes along the mountain, second hole goes down the mountain, and you root around down in the valley for a while. And then you slowly make your way across the golf course at the bottom, the most famous holes, Amen Corner. And then you start to slowly work your way up to where you began your round. And Winnie and I were on the 18th hole with Arnold playing, and we could see him as well as I could see you right now. Nobody came till the Tiger explosion 2 years later. Maybe in 96, because Tiger was now becoming Tiger, it was increased significantly, the attendance. But in 97, it was completely insane. But in 95, I was able to watch every shot that Arnold Palmer, he was still then the most popular player in the history of the game. And Winnie and I could stand right there. So we're walking up the 18th hole towards Arnold's second shot, and the whole plays uphill, as everybody knows. But everybody does not know how steep that hill is. It's crazy steep. You could easily, just like going down the 10th hole, going down the second hole, You could go on a skateboard straight down the hill. If you had a sled, you could go straight down the hill. It's that steep going down. And so it had to be that steep going up. So Winnie and I are walking up the 18th, par 4 hole, slight dog leg right. Arnold gets ready to hit his second shot. And I said, Winnie, I am exhausted. I can't catch my breath. She said, well, the hill you're walking on is 90 degrees straight uphill. And I looked back behind me, and I had been there before, but I looked down that hill, and it's just the most amazing thing. It's impossible to appreciate the third dimension that you don't get when you watch a golf tournament. But it's a crazy uphill shot, and it's crazy long too now because they keep moving that tee back. I mean, when Gene Sarazen won there in 1935, he had to hit a 4-wood for a second shot in regulation play to the green and then 2-putt to be able to tie Craig Wood, who had already finished. And of course, Gene had made the famous double eagle 3 holes before to tie him, but he still needed the 3 pars on 16, 17, and 18, and he got it. So a thrilling way to start. And when Arnold walked off the green after the 36th hole, he saw me behind the green. He walked up to me, put his arm around my arm and around my shoulder, and the two of us slowly started to walk to the big tree under the clubhouse, some 70 yards away from the 18th green. And the sea of people just parted as Arnold and I walked our way up the hill. And he said, just take me to Winnie. And I took him to Winnie, and then I disappeared. So that was pretty magical, and I won't forget that unless my entire memory goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, going with the king, that's pretty spectacular. But what I'm really interested in is you getting to play Augusta. What was that like, getting to actually play it for somebody who's not a professional player and, someone like myself, which we all hope someday we get to play? How did that opportunity come about?
It's too hard for the membership. All the guys there mostly, are pretty old and not very far away from dying. It's hard enough in your 20s. It's a joke, and you're walking. The only one I ever saw get a cart there was Byron Nelson, and he couldn't play anymore, so he just got a cart to drive around. So Bobby Jones was born on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 1902, as was my wife, but not 1902, and my youngest son, also not 1902. And it was the 100th celebration, the centennial anniversary of the birth of Bobby Jones on March 17th, 2002. He would have been 100 years old. He died in 1971, the age of 69. And I get a phone call from a woman, and she says, we want you to host the Bobby Jones Centennial Celebration dinner. It'll be 1,000 people in black tie. And everybody he's ever known in his entire life who's still alive will be there. So it'll be the largest gathering of the Jones clan and the largest gathering of anybody who ever had anything to do with him, who ever knew him in any capacity whatsoever. A guy walking down the street, hello, Mr. Jones. So, of course, I said that would be a thrill of a lifetime. And she said, for a fee, she said, well, we could have you go over to and as soon as she got the out, I went, yes, that's what I want. I said, the big course and the little course, Augusta National. And she said, no problem. You come up the morning of the 16th or the night of the 15th on the Friday, and Sunday being the 17th, and you'll play the big course, and you play the little course, and you'll have lunch, and you'll have a great time. And so everything was organized. And at that point, I was probably about 3 or 4, somewhere in there. I was still breaking 80, almost all of my rounds. And when you park and you're going to play it, you still can come through one of two entrances. One, the public entrance, whereas you walk past what would be the concession area during the Masters was used for other purposes for the club, and everything was beautiful and flowers. Now all of a sudden, you see this colored green, 45-degree angle of the color green, and you realize you're looking at the beginning of the first fairway, which also seems like it's 90 degrees straight uphill. I was stunned at the color. Never saw a color green like that before. And I didn't know that I'd ever seen a hole so steep before. And I knew it was the beginning of the hole, but I had no idea, as you can't from watching TV, of just how serious it is and how important it would therefore be to get to the top of the hill so you could see the green for your second shot. And so over the years, they keep moving the first tee further back, so guys aren't able to quite get to the top of the hill. And then all of a sudden they're hitting, going from hitting 5 irons to 3 irons. So we tee off, and I wasn't nervous or anything. There was no reason to be. I was playing with a lovely guy, and there was nobody there. And I got to the front edge of the green in 2, just on by maybe 2 inches. And I looked at the screen and I'm going, I've never seen anything like this. It looked like a series of coffins, like maybe 6 inches tall, but 6 feet long, with the proper rectangular design. And where it would be flat wood on the sides on the coffin, it was just grass that, went off at a 45-degree angle. So they could put the pin on the coffins. So if you can't put your ball on the top of the coffin and leave it there with the pin and on top of the coffin, you could go 50 feet away. If you go over the far side, bye-bye, you push it a little bit, bye-bye. There were 4 ways to miss: short, long, left, and right. And then you were going to at least take 2 more putts, because it wasn't a friendly release down the slope. I mean, it was like, stop already. So I still think it's the hardest green I ever putted. Was the first green at Augusta National. They did break 90, and you do get caught up in the moments you remember from watching on TV. Oh, there's a spot Larry Mize chipped in from. Oh, I didn't realize that the 12th hole looked quite like this, and how close it was to the 11th green. There's many a mystery that is uncovered that wasn't a mystery before you got there, because you saw what you saw on TV. And it was one of the loveliest days of my life. And the par 3 course is harder than the big course. It's the hardest course you've ever played. The greens are as big as your bathroom, small bathroom. Those guys make it look so simple at the par 3 contest. I couldn't figure out how to hit and hold one. I was a decent player. That was so hard, and the greens were so small. I shot a million over par, but what a way to spend your day. So you play the little course in the morning, then you would have lunch normally, and then you would play the big course in the afternoon, and then you would go home and say, no matter what happened, that was one of the greatest days of my life.
So there's lots of people over the course of the years that talk about the difficulty of the greens, which you just touched on. And there was one very famous person who you also just touched on, and that was Bobby Jones, who notoriously struggled on the greens, in particular when he got to the second hole, which was then the 11th hole in the first round of what was then the Augusta National Invitational in 1934. He was playing with Paul Runyan. I'm wondering if you could tell the story about what happened to Jones on that hole in regards to his putting.
Let me tell it to you through Paul Runyan's eyes, who was playing with him. Runyan, I think, got to play with him because he was the leading money winner the year before on tour. And Runyan said to me that and Runyan was super chatty and full of details, and great guest. He said he noticed he wanted to watch Bobby's putting stroke because they weren't playing in similar tournaments, right? Paul Runyan was a pro and Jones had retired in 1930. And he said he noticed how beautiful Jones's stroke was and how steady his head stayed over the ball and how much it looked like the newsreels, and that he was completely distracted from his own game and getting ready to play just to watch the effortlessness of everything about Jones's demeanor as he was practicing his putting. And so the first hole, uh, Runyan said, Bobby was very, very long, and he got his par. And he said, but when he hit the second green, he said he had about an 18-foot rainbow, and to putt for his birdie three. And he said he made a different stroke than he'd made on the putting green, and it was kind of an iffy stroke. And the putt finished up like 10 feet short of the hole on like an 18-foot putt. And Jones later told Runyan that that was the moment, and he knew the magic was gone. Ever since Jones burst on the national scene in 1916 as a 14-year-old at the U.S. Amateur at Merion, would be his first time in the U.S. Amateur, his first time playing Merion, obviously in an amateur, and the third time he played in 1930 concluded the Grand Slam. So he started at Merion and ended there, and it was noted for its impossible greens. And ever since Jones first burst on the scene, everybody looked at everything he did, and people were saying, people who knew, well, he'll never be able to hit the ball better than he hits it now, and he'll just learn how to string those shots along together better over time, and that his putting was really good, but not as good as his long game. So in the early 20s, he got a lesson from Walter Travis. He had missed their original date. Walter Travis, of course, was the first American to win the British Amateur in 1904. Walter Travis built some of the really, really fine golf courses in the northeast of our country. And so by the time 1930 had rolled around, Jones had had that whole full decade of the lesson. And the lesson was basically, Walter said to him, just go ahead and pretend you're hitting a tack into the back of the ball. Pretend that you're hitting a tack into the back of the ball. And Jones became arguably, along with Walter Hagen in the 20s, the best player anybody had ever seen. So, Runyan was expecting this best player he'd ever seen stuff. And when he saw Jones putting like a normal human being and not a Superman, once that round got going, he too knew that the magic had gone and that tomorrow and another great putting round isn't promised to anybody.